Let's talk about Concrete Cowboy. This is a new modern Western drama, coming-of-age drama, directed by Ricky Staub, and he co-wrote the film with Dan Walser. And it's actually based on a novel. I didn't know this going into the movie. It's called Ghetto Cowboy. It's by Greg Neri. And I also didn't know this going into the film, that it is a fictionalization of a real thing in Philadelphia, where they have this thing called the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. It's a real thing. In the middle of the city, there is an urban horse riding culture in Philadelphia. And I genuinely had no idea about this. It is predominantly African-American, and it's been a long running thing, a long legacy in this community. And what's interesting to me is, like, if this movie was all of that, I think this movie would be brilliant. There was a point where I was thinking that's what it was going to be. I was like, oh my gosh, this is The Last Black Man in San Francisco, but for Philadelphia, because it touches on like development and gentrification and things like that. Mm-hmm. Then no, that's not what this movie is.
Yeah.
Will, what is Concrete Cowboy about, and who is in it?
Oh man, relying on me, the guy who saw this movie, 6 or 8 months ago.
Oh, that's true. I could do the overview if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, my memory of it is a bit fleeting at this point.
All right. So I'll touch on it then. Okay. So this movie stars Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin. They're the two main guys. And the movie actually starts in Detroit, and we have this guy, and you might remember Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things. He's getting a little bit older now, though. He's I think he's almost like 20 years old now. And so he's not the kid from Stranger Things, basically.
He's the man from Stranger Things.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see him, by the way, in a movie like this. I've always kind of felt like that character is a little bit underwritten, and like they've tried to do more stuff with him in the 3rd season of that show, but I don't know. I just always feel like he has to play like the second hat to other characters, when I think that he is really interesting in the context of this kind of Spielbergian. Anyway, Stranger Things conversation for another day. But anyway, so Caleb McLaughlin.
I didn't even think about so this is coming out the same weekend as Godzilla vs. Kong, which is Millie Bobby Brown's thing.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that until now.
Yeah. Two big movies for them, right? Whereas like Millie Bobby Brown, she has been like in films. Like she's had a bit of more of a high profile in Hollywood over the last few years. It looks like Caleb McLaughlin, though, this is kind of representing a different kind of path for him. He's kind of taken a path of like doing these more character studies, which is very exciting, because I think that he is an extremely good actor, and I think this movie solidifies that, even though I don't think this film fully utilizes his talents. I guess I shouldn't say that. Yeah. It does and it doesn't, but we'll get into that. So his whole deal is that he's an angsty teenager. He's got to learn a few lessons. You've seen this frickin' movie so many times where he breaks rules, right?
An angsty teenager.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's just, but that's the thing. He's one summer away. That one summer and a bond with a horse, and he's going to be a changed man. And that is this movie. It's the typical coming of age thing where he goes to a new place, meets a bunch of colorful characters, gets into some trouble, learns lessons the hard way, but a bond with a horse is gonna fix it all. Yeah.
Oh man, who could have guessed it?
I will say though, like this movie, for all of its tropes and all of its sort of like reliance on it, like it's not confident, I think, in its historical legacy stuff, which feels more of like a backdrop instead of the focus. And I think that is a shame. It's like it's trying to squeeze in this other narrative about like if kids had horses, they wouldn't be selling drugs. There's this whole thing with Jharrel Jerome from When They See Us. Wonderful actor, terrific actor. And I'm really happy to see him here. Like he really pulls off this sort of like swarmy but lovable kind of guy who that some bad stuff's going to happen to him at some point and in some way, because he used to be part of this horse riding culture. He's kind of broken away from it because he has bigger aspirations. He has a connection with our main character, Cole, played by McLaughlin. And I think what I struggle with this movie, because this movie has like a tug of war where he's like, okay, I could hang out with my best friend, Smush, played by Jerome, who is offering me like a future, like he's offering me something, like he's offering a way for me to like get something out of this new town. Whereas the first few interactions he has with his dad, played by Idris Elba, his estranged father, it's child abuse, right? Like, am I going too far by saying that? I said that in my review. It really does come off as child abuse.
I don't know if, I mean, that's a gray area I don't know if I feel comfortable going into.
But the fact that it even is a gray area, because like he has to share a living room with a live horse, sleep on a couch, and his dad isn't providing him food. He's not, it doesn't look like he's providing him water and anything sanitary. Like, this is a terrible, terrible environment. So the movie constantly is being like, but this is where you should be right now. And this is the part of the movie where I'm like, what the heck? Like, what? I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know if I would come out of the gate that strongly about his behavior. So I'm gonna sit this one out. that argument out.
Fair enough. But I should say at the same time, Idris Elba dresses up like a cowboy, and we know Idris Elba is a great actor, right? And like,
yes.
All it really takes for Idris Elba to sort of like, he has enough star power so that like for me to be entertained by him in a movie, him dressing up like a cowboy gets us like,
gaze.
Oh my gosh, I'm an easy sell on that for sure. And I like his character in this movie a lot.
Who isn't?
Yeah, I would say so.
I agree. I mean, well, you called him a child abuser, but sure.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, you don't need that stuff. Get rid of that. Like, at least make him like the bare minimum of like providing for his, like giving the kid food.
I know. Sure.
That's all. But anyway, as far as this movie goes, though, on its own terms, Will, I remember you didn't talk about this movie much post TIFF. Like, I remember you talked about other things a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, so what did you think of Concrete Cowboy when you first saw it, and how does it hold up for you? I know you didn't rewatch it, but yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's incidental that I didn't really talk about much because I felt it landed somewhere in the middle, probably like kind of lower to like the third, it wasn't a movie I disliked per se, but it was one that I felt was kind of on the edge between like a decent film and just an okay one. Like I think I'm a little bit more positive than you are just based on how you're talking about the film right now. And that, like, I do agree with you that in the beginning, when it was starting out, I was just like, oh man, like this isn't really doing much that I haven't seen before outside of like a kind of quirky premise. Like when I started the movie, because like I said, I didn't know anything about it going in. I saw a Concrete Cowboy and a picture of Idris Elba on a horse. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be the Western that we were robbed with Dark Tower. Like this is the Idris Elba is in a Western, in like a traditional Western kind of movie that I wanted to see. And that's not exactly what this is. But I think, I think when the story is starting out and it's like kind of laying the pieces into place, it's not really doing much you haven't seen before. Like you said, it is falling into formula. It is kind of feeling like a little by the numbers. I do think in the middle, though, it kind of figures out its formula in a way that, like, I remember there's like a big like horse racing scene halfway through that was just like, okay, I'm kind of into this now because it's like it has like a zippy style to it. Like there's a lot of realism in terms of like how it's photographed and stuff like that. There's an authenticity to creating the environments and stuff like that. And I felt like the writing of it was pretty concise, and it was also able to communicate a lot with these characters without like over explaining things and stuff like that. And by and large, I think I end up feeling like it was a decent film. I think it's also trying to do a little bit too much by the second half. Like they introduce a few extra characters I don't really think fit into the film too well.
Yeah.
Like they kind of, they come into the film kind of awkwardly, and I feel like they kind of take away from what I was enjoying about like the midsection of the film. But I will say, similar to you, I remember when I saw the end of the film and they introduced the fact that this is like a kind of real story in that like this is a real place and this is something that's actually happening in Philadelphia. I remember thinking like, well, why don't we just see the documentary about this? Like, I feel like that's the more interesting story. Like, I'm no offense to like the cast or Idris Elba or anything. Like, I think it's a worthwhile story to tell, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I just think that like by having this kind of contrived by number story, you're taking away from what's, I think, really interesting and what's real about this. And the story, I think that would have been more interesting to explore and tell, which is the real story that they show at the end of the film. And I think there is a communal vibe to that at the end that I found really charming when they like see the like actors and the real people kind of interacting and having fun. I thought like, that's nice. I enjoy that. But at the same time, I just felt like I would rather interact with the real people and kind of get their story and their perspective in the end of this. Like I said, I think the movie we got is fine, and I don't think it does too much wrong. I just didn't find it that remarkable at the end of the day compared to like all the other festival titles that it made much of an impression.
Yeah, I actually agree with almost every single thing you said. We're actually not far off. I just wanted to start off a little bit more negative to give context, for what I think this movie really comes down to, which I think you're exactly right. It's like, it's a decent coming of age thing. I think that it's executed competently, and sometimes they do it really well. I mean, this movie, like you said, like I think this environment feels alive. Like I feel like there is a sense of place here that's not easy to pull off, and you can really tell like Ricky Staub made this from the heart. This guy, you can tell that like he's from the area, that he went into it wanting to like bring awareness to this place. The problem is I just think that he took like a sort of boring, tropey story. He elevated it a little bit, to his credit. I mean, and I think these performers really do. I think Elba and McLaughlin and Jerome particularly just really bring something to it that it doesn't deserve. And yeah, we find out at the end of the movie that a lot of these actors that we're seeing in these stables are, like you said, like the real people who work there and live there. And that does come through. You do sort of feel like that their hearts are in it too, and it does have that sort of like Be Kind Rewind, like let's get together and make a movie kind of mentality that I really find charming and I find heartwarming, and I think that's where this movie is at its best. It's just such a mixed bag that I end up being more disappointed, despite the film not technically being that bad. I wrote my review for Awards Watch, and literally like I gave it the grade and everything, and my editor there was like, so is this fresh on Rotten Tomatoes or is it negative? Because he really couldn't make heads or tails out of where I ultimately landed. And I was like, you know what? I think this is a fresh, because I do think that most people who watch it are going to get something out of it. Even though I'm pretty disappointed right now, I can't say that I'm upset that I saw it or that there's nothing in it that's valuable or worth checking out. And I think it genuinely does come down to they executed it just fine. I just think that the ideas that were inserted into the script were just flawed from the get-go. Like the premise of it was just a little bit like they should. I wish that they had done a little bit more work to refine the story down into something a bit more cohesive, because this could have gone from being just sort of like a forgettable but moderately enjoyable film about this way of life into being something more invaluable and more buzzy, like another Nomadland kind of thing. Even though I don't love Nomadland or anything, I do think that movie does bring a lot more to the table by comparison, even though I think that like this film has more than enough potential to completely outshine a lot of the films we saw this award season. So yeah, that's where I stand on Concrete Cowboy. I definitely don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I saw a lot of movies at TIFF that I like, so when I say it's in the lower quadrant, that's not really a diss on the film per se. I just think that because a lot of the films I saw there were significantly better for a number of reasons, the fact this was just a kind of decent one didn't make it stand out in the pack. Right. I think like if I had seen this at like South by Southwest, it might have even been in my top 10. I don't even know, just compared to like what we saw there. Yeah. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like you said, it's like there's a lot here that's frustrating because like the stuff that works is good or even great. That's like the stuff that holds it back by being kind of plain or kind of by the numbers or derivative or something like that. Just that makes it a little bit more annoying because it's like, oh man, like if you just kind of figured out a unique approach to this thing or maybe like kind of focus story a little bit more or something like that, this could have been like a pretty darn good movie. But as is, I think it's fine. Like I don't dislike it. Like I said, like I think there's stuff in it that's annoying and stuff that could have been better. And like I said, I think the better story is not fully explored here. But in the end, I did find the story between the father and the son, while not original, to be fairly engaging and even kind of sweet at the end. So yeah, I think for that reason, I'll give it like a low but admirable B-.
I'm an extremely high C+. Like it's the highest C+ you can have, but still make it kind of like a soft recommend. Like I really don't think people need to rush out and see this.
Yeah,
there's no urgency to it.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just check it out on Netflix. It's a pretty easy, accessible watch. I think it's probably the best place to put it. I didn't even realize until a month or so ago that Netflix picked it up. But when they did, I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not that long either. It's just under 2 hours, 111 minutes. So you can knock it out if you have an interest in it. And I hope, like to your point, I hope they actually do a documentary about this, because if you did a documentary about this and did it really well, man, you would have such a great story here. You would really have something that I think would take people off guard a little bit more. But alas, this is the movie we got, and it is something. Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.